Okay, guys, let's see what's doing, huh? I don't need, you don't need me to tell you, of course, what happened overnight for most of us, early morning for me. Brexit vote was a reject, and every man, his dog saw that one coming, I suppose. The interesting aftermath I was anticipating might give us something of a direction for the day or the evening or the week or the month or the next year. But alas, well, I suppose it did in some regards. The euro didn't do so well. The pound, actually, let's have a look at those charts. This yellow line is where we were this time yesterday. And look at where we are this time today. A mere 20 odd pips away from yesterday's equivalent time. By the time we get to the open, we may be well the same. Who knows? That's the pound. The euro, not so good, but not disastrous by any stretch. No going over the waterfall or anything like that. There's yesterday's bar, and what was it? 1489 to 1381. About 108 pip bar. So all things considered, not the worst result on the planet. But obviously, if you were bearish and in the markets, which we advise you not to be, then you've probably done okay out of, well, maybe, I don't know. How did that actually go? I don't think the euro was terribly whipsawy. No, it was pretty much one direction, whereas the pound was certainly not. It gave way instantly, but then recovered, bang, very, very rapidly. So it briefly ducked below 127, but then monthly pivot technicals, straight through the weekly, back to the daily, and guess where we are right now? Yesterday's daily pivot. Amazing. So really, I don't think anything has changed too much. And we're still in the dark. We still don't know what's going to take place. We're expecting a no confidence vote today. All sorts of things going on. I'm sure Ash is up to speed with that, and he'll join me in a minute. Let's go back to the Forex Factory and see what is upcoming. Or let's just go back yesterday and check the numbers. The PPI that we talked about out of the States was a miss to the downside. And what else happened? Draghi spoke. I read Draghi's statement or testimony, yeah, to the Parliament, and look, he was praising himself basically. I guess he's entitled to do that in his last. That was his last presentation to the Parliament, or his last testimony to the Parliament, as I understand it. And he spoke about what had been achieved, or what the ECB had achieved, what he had achieved. Not so much mentioning himself, but the bank in general, the central bank in general, over his tenure, which was or is in its 8th year, I think. But I think yesterday was the 20th anniversary, or certainly we're very close to it, the 20th anniversary of a Eurozone, or the Euro actually being an entity. That's interesting. Happy birthday, or whatever, to the ECB or the Eurozone. So I don't know. The market didn't rally on that. Maybe it held. Maybe he held it up. I don't know. But of course, we hadn't had the Brexit vote at that time, so there was no perceived reaction to that speech or that testimony. And of course, we had the rejection. We've just been through that. Pound back where it was. Euro off. Let's kind of try and skip through that, shall we? I'm over it. What have we got coming up? Let me refresh this page so that we're on speed. We're on Wednesday. It is around about 25 minutes to 8 in London town. And in an hour and 50 minutes from now, we've got hour and 50 and 40 minutes. or thereabouts. Maths isn't real good at this time of day. We've got Carney speaking, so I don't know what he's doing. Let's have a look-see. He's also testifying today with 3 FPC members on the financial stability before the Treasury Select Committee in London. I wonder, is it even possible for him to make a difference today to the pound? I can't see him saying anything outrageous to drive the market outside of its current zone, I wouldn't have thought. And then, of course, 15 minutes later, we've got the CPI, the yearly CPI, coming out. And again, the question must be asked, I suppose, if this is a miss, is it going to be strong enough to move the markets with still the uncertainty of what happens next in Brexit negotiations? Good question, and I'm going to bring Ash in. I think I can hear him rustling in the background. What do you think, mate? How are you going?
Yeah, not too bad, actually, mate. Yeah, not too bad. Yesterday's trading and politics was fascinating. I watched the vote come in, lost by 230, if I'm right.
Yes,
or at least,
yeah.
yeah, which is, that's the biggest loss since 1927 or something, 1926. So it is a huge loss. Almost 100 years since somebody's lost so drastically and stayed in power, I think, or stayed in government. Nobody loses. Nobody loses like that and stays as PM. But as I was saying, she's so belligerent that I can't see her really ever stepping down. But what was quite interesting, I thought, as I said before, that the players in this, the real kind of integral players in this whole picture are the DUP and Northern Ireland, and they've been interviewed since the vote, and they've been asked, would they, because Jeremy Corbyn instantly tabled a vote of no confidence. Theresa May said, if anybody wants to table a vote of no confidence, we will debate this tomorrow. And Jeremy Corbyn stood up and said, you're completely incompetent. I am now officially tabling that vote of no confidence. So everybody knew that it was on the table. Everybody knew it was that there's a vote of no confidence bill, and I think that might be today. And the DUP have been interviewed, and when they were asked, would they back the bill of no confidence, they said, we will back the government. We are backing the government. They said that we are not against the government, but we're against this deal. And there are two substantial. They are two substantially different things. So certainly they've got, or Theresa May has got the backing of her current partners in the DUP. So it's going to take some of her own MPs, some of the Conservatives to oust her, because obviously all the Labour are going to oust her because they want the general election, because that's what happens next. She loses the bill of no confidence, and then there's a general election triggered. So so Labour will need some support. Now they're going to get a little bit of support. They're going to get the SNP on side. They are going to get the Lib Dems, I suspect, but it's not going to take. It's not going to take that many, to stick with Theresa May, that have really already said that they will stick with her. Even Boris Johnson, he's not going for this bill of no confidence, because they probably know that if there is a general election, well, actually, if there's a general election, she probably would have to step down. So there could be there's a possibility she could lose that. I haven't really read up on the numbers on that just yet, and I will get on top of that. But that's where we're at right now, and. It was a difficult thing. It was that we all, Paul asked a question yesterday, where are we going to be in 24 hours? And my answer at the time was, I think we'll be back exactly where we are.
Yeah, you got it.
And I got it. And I was thinking about it, and I think I could be really proud about this. But actually, it was a flip of the coin. And that's exactly what happened. Everybody flipped the coin and said, I think this. And I just happened to come up with the right answer, because it could have gone any way. Because we didn't really know what would happen after the vote, and there's times in the past where I've thought the pound would do one thing and it's done something completely different, and I guess that the point that I'm making is that we are still at that point where we're flipping coins and guessing what's going to happen next, and it makes trading difficult. For me, I look at the charts this morning thinking the trade that I would have taken yesterday would have worked out. But I still feel just a bit uncomfortable, taking these trades, and I just feel like I just want to kind of get through some of the, because you were just asking about Carney and these numbers, and yes, they should make a difference, but then you've got this huge thing of this government vote. So to my mind, if those numbers are weak, they'll make a difference. But if they're strong, I'm not so sure whether they will. But it's quite interesting, isn't it, that Theresa May loses a vote by such magnitude, and and the pound remains healthy enough to hold on to its gains from the last few weeks.
Well, if anything, they were selling into the announcement, into the vote, so it really has rallied at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah, and the slightly irritating thing for me was the other thing that I was talking about yesterday was selling the euro pound, just getting into it, and then if it closed above.
Yep.
My point of the selling thing was I don't know if you can see my screen yet. You probably can't.
Yeah, it was interesting that the pound did nothing. The euro went 70 odd pips. Euro pound went 30, about half that.
Yeah.
And so again, that was heavily sold into that announcement as well.
Yeah. So I was saying, to sell around these pivots, it seemed like a pretty good place. And then with the idea of hedging at the top here. I don't know, can you see my screen?
No. Now I can.
You can. Okay, yeah. So it was selling at the pivots and then hedging at the top, and they worked out to be a really good place to do that. But again, it was one of those ones. I just when push came to shove, I didn't feel comfortable putting that order in, because that's what I was going to do, just put the order in, and I think at the time I did get a little bit distracted by everything, to be honest, and by the time I'd kind of remembered, it was a little bit too late. So because and not because I wasn't on top of things to do with trading, but I don't generally trade these things. I generally trade the FTSE. So if FTSE trades, I know what's going on, and I know what I want to do. But when it comes down to some of the other currencies, I'm much more likely to forget, I guess.
Yeah, look, the only trade that I wanted to place would have worked out also, and that was euro short underneath that little bar I spoke to you about.
Yes.
But again, I wasn't about to trade it. Where was that? Yesterday. All my troubles seem so far away. Was it on the 4-hour chart? No. Where was the dash thing? Going back to yesterday, there was a false break somewhere. Probably haven't got the trade line or trend line on there. That's why I can't see it.
Let me pass you back that then.
Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so we had this coming through here. No, we didn't. We had this one coming through here. That was the trade. I'm like you yesterday. I can't find the damn thing. Crazy mama. I can't find the trade. Anyway, it was a short, but I can't find where the entry was. I don't know if it was that bar or that bar. Or a tiny little fella. Anyway, it's history. I think the wise thing to do was to stay out, because it's very easy in retrospect to say, look, had I done this, it would have done that, and I would have made it quid. And, I wouldn't have made a fortune out of it. So it's no big deal. I don't mind missing it. So do we now go back to where we were yesterday and on Monday and the day before that, where we still know nothing and we're still in limbo?
Yeah.
Do we actually trade into these news announcements, given that we think there's going to be a miss or a gain?
That's the problem. Yeah, this is the problem. This is the problem we've now got. Now, Mr. Corbyn launched a motion of no confidence in the government. So it will be voted on at 7 p.m. today. So we've really sort of like back to where we were, where we've got a whole day of waiting for that particular announcement. I mean, you know, the political scenario is amazing right now, but it's really held up things for me because, you know, I've had effectively 2 weeks, or it will end up being 2 weeks where I can't take a trade because I can't justify taking trades into that decision. And it's starting to get a little bit close to the end of the week. Maybe on Thursday there might be something, but Friday I'd be reticent, and then I travel next week. So there's really 2 weeks towards the end of this month where
You're on
where
holidays,
things.
mate.
Well, not holidays, unfortunately. I'm going to Singapore for an
No,
IFP.
you're on holidays from trading. That's what I mean.
Oh, yeah, yeah. In a way, I am. Well, to a degree, but I still have to come and look at the charts. To be quite honest, if I didn't have to do the show, I probably would have turned my computer off and said, right, that's 2 weeks. I'm just not going to do anything.
Yeah, look, ditto, absolutely. But the show must go on,
Yeah.
and we must have an opinion, and the opinion, the opinion is I don't really want to have an opinion. But there's that Euro one from yesterday. I finally found it was the daily chart.
Yeah,
It was a false break. But there's no fortune to be won there, and so it's no big deal.
Yeah, do you know the interesting thing for me as well is that oftentimes I pick the correct direction, and then because of that I go into a trade going, well, I picked it last time, so it'll be okay, and then the next time I pick it wrong. So it's just that it's, you know, back again to the flip of the coin thing, that that it just makes me good, but it just makes me a little bit kind of weary about going right. Okay, so I know what's going on with this market. Let's get back in here. We're okay, and then, you know, end up getting it completely wrong again. So I just feel like I just need to just walk away from the charts for a little while.
Yeah, look, I've still got I've still got this Aussie trade in the market, which is just languishing, 12 pips out of the money. I've got no stake in it at all, really. It's just a setup because it was there. And I thought I might give it a little bit of a run. I've also got a short on the Aussie yen.
Oh, yeah, okay. Let's have a look at that.
Which popped up. This hasn't triggered, of course, but I'm playing bearish engulfing bar lower high, and we're playing this candle here. So we've got an entry underneath this confluence area of yesterday's daily pivot, the current weekly pivot, and this resistance trend line going through here. So I think if price can get through there, maybe we'll be okay. But the one and obvious elephant in the room is this is going nowhere. It's really absolutely going sideways. So I guess I'm thinking bottom of range. Where is the range is the question. Is it here? Is it here? I really don't know because it's not that defined. Maybe I've got to go back in time to find it. It's just, a messy, sloppy, ungainly thing. And
it's kind of flat, isn't it?
Yeah, look, the annoyance is we know it's ranging, but unless I can define the range, I really can't trade the top and bottom. And I really don't know where the top and bottom is here. I can't put a rectangle on this. Maybe it's not a rectangle I'm looking for. Maybe it's a channel I'm looking for. Maybe that's where I've got this whole thing mixed up. Or maybe it simply doesn't exist. Yeah, I might go with that.
While you're doing that, I'm just listening into Michel Barnier. He's making a statement right now.
Okay. Why?
About the Brexit vote.
Okay. So yeah, look, if this high is taken out, then I change polarity fairly quickly, and that wouldn't be such a bad thing because the Aussie US dollar is probably going okay, or getting back to where it needs to be. But gee, I'm struggling, really struggling. The one thing I said yesterday about Aussie Kiwi was that it failed and still failed to close below this trend line. That's still the case. Can I find a way into this? And I was thinking that there may have been an entry. Where was the trend line? Through here, I think, yes. Those of you who were in the show yesterday, I had a trend line coming through here. And I suggested that if this bar, maybe it was on the hourly chart actually. No, what was the 30-minute chart? All right. I was suggesting.
Wow.
Actually, I think it was this bar, but they're all the same. Everything's the same. We come across and come back, cross and come back. And finally, we had a little bit of a breakout before Brexit. You wouldn't have got anything out of this if you trade my way. You would have got a first take profit if you're really lucky. And then, I know you would have got a first take profit up here anyway. Definitely. So before the Brexit vote, but you would have had to stay awake all night, bugger that. And then the Brexit vote, bang, bang. You've got no chance of surviving that. And maybe you even had your stop slipped. Hopefully that wouldn't have been the case, but there was a little trade there, I suppose, but very, very messy chart and tough to trade. The one thing I would say about this one is I can define a range here because we do have a genuine rectangle. And there's probably a few actually. Let's use the latest one. Maybe here. Somewhere in there, maybe you could tighten it up a bit if you wanted, and you could come down to here. That's probably more it, actually. So a few falsies. And when I look at this, let's get rid of these trend lines.
Interesting. I don't know if you want me to give you a little review of this.
Yep, I'll just finish this up and please
Sure.
do. So when I burst out of a range, in particular a horizontal level, I look for it to come back inside and give me a lower high if I'm up the top. Look for it to come back inside and give me a higher low if I'm out down the bottom. This is probably the first chance that we've seen to get a genuine lower high in here. So I'll be having a look at that one. Aussie Kiwi on the 30-minute chart. Let's stick with that and see how that goes. What do you got, mate?
So I think that the bottom line, Michel Barnier is effectively saying we took a long time to negotiate this 600-page deal with the UK, and it was a good deal. Contrary to what's been reported, it's a good deal, and it protects everybody, and it puts into law what can happen when the UK leaves the European Union on the 29th of March. And that effectively what he's saying is that is the deal. But I think the most interesting aspect of that, he said, this is the best deal that we can come up with according to the UK government's red lines. Now, when Theresa May put down her red lines, that was the thing that caused the furore in the Houses of Parliament, because she ruled out a customs union and she ruled out a single market. Ruled out both of them flat. So she was effectively tying her hands behind her back straight away. So I guess what Michel Barnier is saying is, because the UK government decided it was going to take this particular stance, there was not really a lot we could do with a deal. You know, that was the best possible deal that we could give the UK if they don't want to be in the single market and they don't want to be in the customs union. They want to protect Ireland. They want to protect the fact that there's no border in Ireland, and they want to protect the people of the European Union and the people of Britain, and they want to make sure that the British have got a close relationship with the EU, according to the red lines that were put down. The reason I think that's interesting is that Labour have got a completely different position on the single market and the customs union. So even though he is saying that's the best possible deal, the caveat sounds to me as he's saying that's the best possible deal with what we were presented with. So if there was a different presentation, then maybe there could be a different outcome to the Brexit negotiations. And now they will await the UK government's stance, and then they will talk again about how to move forward. And I think unless Theresa May comes back and says, okay, the red lines are now broken, then we will remain exactly where we are and have no chance of a possible deal getting through Parliament. And because of that, then it's again a flip of a coin. Does that mean that we go back to the British people? Because the thing is, what will happen then is that Parliament will vote it down again, and because of the impasse in the House, then the MPs will say we can't decide, so the UK, the people of the United Kingdom will have to decide, and then on the ballot paper, I would suggest will be no deal, Theresa May's deal, or remain, because that's been the other argument is what's going to be on the ballot paper. You know, if that was to come back to the British people in another referendum, what's going to be on the ballot paper? But it's starting to become pretty clear if Theresa May is unwilling to move, the options on the ballot paper will probably be a three-way option, and that will make things, I think, a lot more interesting. I don't think too many people want Theresa May's deal in the country, so it will almost become a binary choice again of leave or remain. So
so what would happen now if today the vote of no confidence succeeds?
Yeah.
What happens to Brexit? Does that go on hold whilst the government rearranges itself, or?
Well, they would have to. They would have to request an extension to Article 50. That's the first thing that would happen. So if they got the extension to Article 50, then the general election will take place over the course of 2 to 3 months, I suppose. And then after the general election was won or lost, then we're effectively back to knowing maybe a little bit about what what's going to be the direction of the country. Because if a general election is triggered, if we do have another general election triggered, each party will have to run on a specific manifesto, and that manifesto will have to include their Brexit position. And Theresa May won't survive that, because if there's no majority in her own party for her Brexit position, then why would they want her to lead the party into the general election when she can't win that vote? So there are a few, there are a few different options for her. The first thing could happen is that she could win the vote of confidence, of no confidence, and then she comes back and says, right, let's get down with the House and find what the majority in the House is. Because if you can find the majority in the House, then she can go back to the European Union and say, this is our position. And at least then we have a proper negotiating position to kind of move forward with.
That's probably the most likely outcome, isn't it? I think she can win this again, can't she?
She won't win with the current deal.
No. The vote of no confidence I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, I think she could. Yeah, I think she could, because I don't think there's too much appetite in her own party to oust her, which surprises me a little bit. But I guess maybe the options that are there won't really thrill the Remainers, because anybody that wants to remain knows that the possibility, if Theresa May leaves, will probably be somebody like Boris Johnson. And it makes it very, very difficult. That the Conservative Party is split down the middle pretty much on this issue. So you either go out and get a leave a politician. So you'll get to Boris Johnson. Maybe Jacob Rees-Mogg might throw his hat in the ring, but I suspect he probably wouldn't if Boris Johnson was there. And the other side of it is that you get a Remainer of the likes of Amber Rudd or somebody like that standing, and there's no guarantee that Boris would win that. His stock did significantly diminish over the course of the last 2 years, and the fact that he pulled out of the vote in the first place doesn't probably thrill the Conservative hierarchy. So it could end up being a Remainer, and if it's a Remainer, then I think it will probably then go back to the people. I think a Remainer probably wouldn't have the confidence to say, I tell you what, let's just call the whole thing off. But they probably would say, we're going to have another referendum. We can't get through Parliament, and our position as a Conservative Party will be to campaign for Remain. So that general election will be fascinating, and the reason I think it will be even more interesting is because Labour's position on the remaining within the EU is very, very cloudy, and Jeremy Corbyn, his popularity has also waned. And one of the reasons his popularity has waned is because he still seems to want to stand on a manifesto that pulls us out of the European Union. And you know, many of his voters are young people, students, and young people that would have voted for Remain. So I'm not sure whether him calling for this general election will be that good for him, which would mean if he was to lose, he would have to step down. So yeah, I mean, it is just a crazy, crazy time in the UK right now, and during all this, I am seeing the pound put in a little bit of strength. You know, and that's the fascinating thing. We've had a whole year or 2 years of uncertainty, and the uncertainty has caused the pound to weaken. And I don't think right now that we've been any more uncertain than ever before, and yet the pound is strengthening. So kind of go figure that. It just it just doesn't really make a whole bunch of sense, except for the possibility that people are banking now on the fact that that the time is too close for us to negotiate this leave deal, and we'll end up remaining, and or the can gets kicked down the road, which I can't see how that being any better anyway. You know, the can getting kicked down the road doesn't give people certainty either. But you know, this is stopping investment in business. It's stopping probably the Bank of England raising interest rates.
Far more important than all that.
Yeah. This is the thing. You know, the FTSE 100 has just opened up, and it's a little bit flat right now. Interesting patterns going on the FTSE 100, which we'll discuss in a moment. But
so, are you trading today?
Do you know what, mate? I'd love to, and let me show you what I was looking at with a FTSE in the first.
Because, you know, really, if we're not going to trade, we're wasting our time being here. So
yes,
let's discuss it.
Let's discuss it, okay, and then we'll come to a conclusion. So, firstly, let's just have a look at the longer term timeframes, because that's really sort of the best place always to start. And the longer term timeframes are still suggesting that that we are you know, crushed, caged in a downtrending market. We've got this stuff going on here. That's our level there. Looks like it might even be a bit of a channel. So that's what we have. We've got this channel, and the thing with this is that there's patterns within patterns in some respects, because we have this downward down channel, and we're at the top end of the down channel. We also have this inverted head and shoulders, which looks like the right shoulder is higher than the left shoulder, which is a bullish signal. You know, when the right shoulder is unable to kind of get down, it does suggest that that the price action is more bullish. And the reason that we can start to assume that this is where that the right shoulder will exist, and if it breaks the downside from here, then the pattern starts to collapse, is because of the amount of bars in the left shoulder, which is around about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, call it 7. And this right shoulder is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they're around about the same. It's around about equal right now. So a breakdown here will start to break this pattern. Now, when we go to the shorter term timeframes, what we have is a 4-hour chart, which has and this is the inverted head and shoulder, which is on the wider time frame. A 4-hour chart which is showing a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder to the downside. So that is suggesting that we are likely to move lower. And this is the trend line that is caging us in on the 4-hour, and that's just about holding up so far. So I wouldn't really be that keen on trading into this area. Now, when we kind of bring in some of the indicators, and then we start to get an even more cloudy picture in some respects, because the I mean, the RSI is fairly unreadable in many respects, because price action is pretty unreadable, so it's always expressed that way. But we have these pivots, and they're kind of all in the way. You know, this monthly pivot is suggesting that is a kind of right shoulder area that would bounce. But if that monthly pivot was to, I think, be as valid now, it would have had to held up this particular trend line. It would have to be in conjunction. So with the weekly pivot. Yeah. Well, this is the thing, and I guess that's what we're seeing is that there are probably other ways to play this that that I'm just not
you can make
quite
a case for a lot of things.
I think you could, and this is the weekly pivot here. The daily pivot is trapping it a little bit, but really now I think we are looking for downside. But I wouldn't be that comfortable with any downside until we broke this particular line. And I think the only way that I would really want to trade this is with a move down to the monthly pivot, and then a move back up to the trend line or the horizontal level here somewhere, and then we can start looking for downside from there on in. But that would be my personal stance and my personal position on that. And you know, to be fair, this could actually start to move on Mark Carney, and it could move on numbers. But my problem with it is the potential speeches that could happen throughout the day that I wouldn't necessarily be a party to, and somebody could say something out the blue here. I mean, we are in such odd times and such a we are in such a strange position that that trying to trade is going to be a little bit more tricky. But realistically, there's not too much that would suggest that we should be looking for upside. I don't see the upside potential here. We've got a confusion in Parliament. We've got a no confidence vote. We've still got the issue that has been hanging over us about what's been going on in the world's trade, which is pretty weak. So there's not really a lot which would suggest that to upside. So really, we want to be looking for downside. It's a little bit lower than I would have liked. I would have really liked another run at this high and then look for the downside. But this is where we are. So I think there is a possibility of taking a trade, but I'd need to see something where it comes down and makes a high and then comes down, because here looks like we're closer to a lower area than a high area, even though it would be higher than this point. It's kind of come down, and it's in the middle, if anything else, of a different kind of range, I guess. You know, maybe a 15-minute range. It doesn't really look like I've managed to pick it out at the right particular spot. You know, this low would have been a good point to trade, and that's what I wanted to do yesterday. But because of Brexit's votes, I wasn't comfortable with that. So the likelihood is, if there's going to be trades, it will be this afternoon. Maybe we need to wait for Mark Carney's speech. Maybe we need to wait for some of that data. So if it's going to happen, it will be later, I think.
Yeah, fair call, mate. I don't have really anything to add to that, to be absolutely frank with you. I've got a trade in the market on the Aussie that is now in a complete 50-50 position. You know, it's, again, we're back to coin tossing. I think I said this yesterday. This is a trade that I really didn't want to be in when it was triggered. I thought, no, look, I know this is going to hang around, and it's going to, maybe in 2-3 days' time we'll get a result out of this. But in the meantime, we'll just go through all of this garbage, and that's exactly what's going on. Nothing's happening. And if I had serious money on this, I think I'd actually close it. But I don't. So
yeah.
You know, I might as well just leave it there and see what happens.
Yeah. I think that's fair, mate. I mean, I think, as I say, I just think it's a day that you just leave to the lap of the gods in a way, and just let it happen, let it pass, because you know, we know that there are trading opportunities all the time, and if things don't seem correct and right to us, then I don't really know why we would put ourselves in a position that we are trading a market when in 10 days' time we get a trade a market that is a lot better for us, which we have a much clearer view on, and
It'll be like a
you know,
reboot. It'll be a reset, you know, and that's what I'm looking forward to. There will be a reset
yeah,
at some stage, but it's
yeah,
not right now. It really
no,
isn't.
no, because you know what we don't want is for the news to be dominated by this one issue, because that's not what should be moving global markets. Because whatever happens from here on in, whether Brexit happens, whether it's the UK goes on World Trade Organization, whether they get the Theresa May deal through, whether they go for my prediction of the Norway style option, whether they get a general election and Labour go and negotiate, whether they remain. All these different things don't really tell you the strength of the UK economy in the next 5 years. Because even with WTO rules, if you listen to some people, that's the best possible thing that can happen to us. So they're not based on numbers. There's nothing fundamental that we can really hang our hat on here. What we have is a slowing worldwide economy, and they are fundamentally printed because the Chinese economy has slowed and it has given the rest of the world this cold. So that's the kind of thing that we want to be looking at. You know, what the data releases tell us. You know, what's the strength of an economy because CPI is going in a specific direction. What's the strength of an economy because unemployment is going in a specific direction. All this stuff with Brexit, no matter what the outcome, is conjecture, and it makes trading very, very tenuous.
Yeah, might as well go to the casino, mate.
Yeah.
That's Angus, of course. Alison's home, no doubt.
Yeah, and also we're talking about Brexit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm over talking
Angus
about
doesn't
Brexit.
like that. I think Angus is probably not happy because he's Scottish and he wanted to remain.
Is he?
Well, Angus is a Scottish name.
I'll have to react to him about that.
Is he ginger?
No, he's blue.
Oh, he's blue. Oh,
Blue.
well, yeah.
He's an Aussie cattle dog, ACD.
Okay. Well, I still think he's got an opinion about all this stuff. That
he seems to every time we overstretch the Brexit thing. He has a bit of a crack, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
Just shut up, you idiots.
Yeah, yeah.
You really don't know what the outcome's going to be while you're commentating on it. Just
yeah, I think he's saying, just take me for a walk and stop worrying about what's going to, let's go for a walk for 2 weeks. And when you get back,
God.
Yeah.
There'll be a few pubs passed on the way, I'd say, in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I see. An Australian car, he's got a bit of a wild look about him.
What have you got up?
Australian cattle dog. It kind of looks like
Yep.
Looks a bit like a hyena.
Does it not? Like a hyena.
Yeah. Yeah, he looks like a he looks like he's got some wild dog in him.
No, he's pure. Well, kind of,
I'm sure he's very friendly.
Oh, he is, absolutely. Unless you come to the gate at night.
Yeah. Or talk about Brexit.
Then don't talk about Brexit, absolutely. What do you think we should do?
Well, I suppose, I don't like finishing early unless there's a good reason to, and I think for us there's good reason to. But I think if there's anybody that wants us to look at something, then I think we should look at it. But nobody seems to be looking at anything.
No, they're probably listening to us and saying, "Well, if these guys aren't trading, then why should I?"
Well, this is.
But the truth is, if you've got an opinion on a currency cross, or then why not trade it?
Yeah, this is the thing.
As long as it's not pound US dollar or pound yen or pound Aussie or euro, whatever. I would steer away from those. I really would at the moment. Because
Pedro's here, mate. Pedro said, "Have we looked at the Aussie yen?" Which you did look at, but maybe we could have another look at that.
Okay, I'm not sure where you're seeing that, but
So I have to open up in a different browser our channels. I'm watching us live on a different browser, and it gives us the questions.
Okay, so the actual question box doesn't work, but well, I don't want to know.
No.
I don't want to know. Yeah, look, I said before, Aussie, in the way I'm playing this, I'd love to get rid of that candle. Be awesome. Let me see if I can do something about that.
He's saying 1 hour to 15.
1 hour to 15. 1 hour to 15. Does that mean 1 hour to 15? 1 hour chart to 15-minute chart?
I guess so.
Okay.
Is that what you mean, Pedro? That you're trading the 1 hour chart, and so that means that you're taking a trigger from the 15. Oh yeah, I see.
Okay, well, let me work backwards. Here's what I've got, and what I've got is a bearish engulfing bar and a lower high, but it's a. I'd love to get rid of that. That's why I want to get rid of that candle. Let me get rid of that candle. I wish you could just put an eraser on it. That would be good. What am I trying to do here? Trying to put show grid. Okay. Grid. Why can't I see my marker? I should have a marker up here. Maybe it's the wrong color. Come on. No, that's not working at all. La la la. Sorry about this. Show grid. Okay. Grid. And I still can't see it. It should be there. I should be able to squeeze this. I'll try another way. Won't let me do that either. Damn. Okay. Bearish engulfing bar. Very technically a lower high, but it's not a great lower high. And that's what I'm trading. I'm trading that lower high on the back of the bearish engulfing bar. So I've got my entry underneath. And the reason I think that I'm willing to do this is because we've got the pivots smashed close together. And if we break both of them and get a close below, I think we've got a little run to the downside. I don't know how far that run's going to be. It probably will have a stall around about that level, around about 77.06, and that's fine. We can look to take a nice little profit out of that. If this potential high, and it's technically a high, if it goes, then I think I change my mind straight away because it's no longer a lower high. And I'm really stretching the friendship to call it a lower high. If you want me to take that down to the hourly chart, with that in mind, we're putting in an equal high. We've got a bearish engulfing bar here, but no entry for me yet. The other thing I see is potential break and retest of a trend line. If that were on the daily pivot, I think I'd have to trade it. But at that time, you're trading into the high of the day at a resistance level, which is my stop loss. So I think it's tough for me to go long here. Not impossible, but tough. If I were to go long, I think I'd like to go long from down here. The 15-minute chart. If I haven't got an entry on the hourly, I'm not going to have an entry on the 15. But what I do see on the 15-minute chart is the potential for this to come back underneath the broken trend line, then retest it and give me the short well before the entry that I've got way down here. So that's my take on it. And until this high goes, or we get back down here, I couldn't go long. Not yet. Not from here. So that's my take on it. You got an opinion?
Well, my so what I was looking at here, let's have a look. Yeah, I do have an opinion. It's probably not an opinion that Pedro really wants to hear, but my opinion is that when I look at this chart, I see price action which is so thinly contested that I don't see how there's any read that I could get on this. I mean, if I was looking for the any direction, yes, it would be a short, because we are at a level of resistance here. Where that short gets to is probably going to remain within the range. I don't really see us breaking in any specific direction from this particular point. So if you're scalping or looking at some sort of short-term trade, then from this point down to this point, I think would be absolutely fine. And you're looking at a 15-minute chart. The 15-minute chart is in an uptrend. So if you're going to be, I guess, safe and you want to look for that first low, you're probably waiting for this to break down and then looking for this low. There's probably enough room actually to take a fairly decent trade, but
that's similar to the false break I've got on the 15 as well. Be the same
it
entry.
just doesn't really. But you know the issue really comes when you look at this this 4 hour. That's my problem with this, is that price action's so tight here. It doesn't suggest that we're going to break out. I don't think there's any news that's due that suggests this is going to break out. So it looks like we probably will come back down to the lower end. I know you've got this level here. So yeah, it looks like we'll probably come down to this point. So if you are going to trade this, then maybe looking at a short wouldn't be the worst option in the world. But those pivots look like they're stacked right on top of us as well here. And this is I'm trying to scroll up here to get more detail, but there's just no more detail to have here. Let's just have a look on the 15 daily pivot. Yeah, I think that the best possible option would be wait for this break. If you're going to trade this on a 15, wait for this break, which would also be a break of the daily pivot. Break, back test of the daily pivot, short it, and probably look to take profit around about that weekly pivot. I probably wouldn't hold on to it though, because there's just nothing there that suggests that we are going to get much more out of this than just a little intraday trade. And that trend line there as well would also suggest the weekly pivot. So I think the weekly pivot is the target. And as I say, I think a break below the daily pivot, back test, shorting with the stops at the highs of that particular area would at least give you something of a 25. Might give you a 2-to-1 trade, but I'd take it out. I'd be aiming for that weekly pivot and coming out. So that would be my stance if I was trading this.
Okay, my 4 hour trade is a 7-to-1 trade.
Oh, nice.
I'll show you that. We've got the targets down here. I think if there's a target to be had and they do get away short here, then that's probably it. And that's really why I've been willing to take this. And it's very small stake again, because I think the market is demanding that I trade very, very small. So, that's my take. Entries underneath the weekly pivot and this low. Very tight first take profits at which I'll close and make myself safe. And if we get a run down, happy days. If we don't, then look, it's not the worst thing that could have happened to you. So I'm okay with that. I don't have an issue. Yep. But what's Pedro seeing, by the way? What's he looking at?
Well, I don't know, Pedro. Does that make sense to you? You've you said 1 hour to 15. I mean, the 1 hour. What I was seeing on the 1 hour is that potential level of resistance. I don't see too much more than that when it comes down to indicators. The 15 would be just a break of the trend line of the pivot. Have you got anything more than that? Well, let me just check the Actually, you know what? There is maybe an indicator on the 1 hour. You know, you could maybe sort of say that there's a channel here that looks like it's being broken down. So that would oh no, that's the 15. That's no good. Yeah, the 1 hour doesn't really give you anything. Maybe it says that it's at the top end of this RSI. So the RSI is unreadable. It doesn't really tell you too much. But it does look like we're at a high. So price action. I mean, there is a trade. I'm not sure if there's a better trade out there, but yeah. So Pedro's seeing the same things, and he's had his line drawing the same way. Short scouts the weekly pivot, divergence on the 4 hour. Yeah. Yeah, there's yeah, that's true. That is actually pretty accurate actually. So Pedro's kind of on the same page, and he's looking at that low of the weekly pivot. So I think if you're gonna take a short option here, on a shorter term time frame, that weekly pivot looks like a pretty good target. If you're comfortable hanging on for that 4 hour to kick in, that's obviously a place you take profit and leave the rest run. So that's another option too. But yeah, I think you're right, mate. I see all the things that you're looking at.
Yep, then we all do, I guess. No mystery there.
But you've traded this short, haven't you, Jeff? You put an order in here.
I've got an order in.
Yeah.
I'm short underneath the 1, 2, 3. Hang on, I can't even see myself. Underneath the 1, 2, 3, fourth candle back
on the 4 hour chart.
Yep.
Yeah, so you're going short at the break of the weekly pivot.
Well, basically, yes.
Yeah. So that's another option, is that you enter here on a 15 and take profit on the weekly pivot, and then put another order in where Jeff's got his order in, so that you've managed to take a bit of profit. And then if there's a bounce, you're not affected. But if it's to keep going, you still manage to get triggered in. So that's another possibility, that you get profit here and then get triggered in around about 70. What have you got? 77.70 or something?
My level is 77.80.
77.80. So yeah, profit of the weekly pivot at 77.89, and then 77.80 would be there. Oh yeah, the low of this candle here. I got it. Yeah. I mean, that looks okay. It looks all right for an opportunity, and probably it may well be the best opportunity out there.
Don't think I'd hang my hat on that one, but it's an opportunity. Yeah.
Mm.
I don't think I'd go to the point saying it's great.
So you are not in later on, are you? I think I am.
No, I'm not, mate. No.
No, you got
off. Yep.
Your night off. Okay, mate. Brilliant. All right. Well, let's close up. I mean, you've got the deal is a trade or 9 o'clock, and we've got a trade in. So
yeah,
let's
the Aussie from where was it? Monday, I think. Perhaps. Yeah. Where are we now? Wednesday. Yeah. Look, as I said, toss of a coin from here. In my opinion, could go either way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Pedro. Speak tomorrow, mate. Hopefully there'll be something tomorrow. We'll see how we get on, shall we?
Yeah, look, sorry guys for actually bailing early, but really, we can only say so much about Brexit. We've said so much. We're going to repeat ourselves, and that's no fun to you guys. And really, we're not seriously trading. So if we're not trading and we're over talking about Brexit, I think it's probably time just to give it a miss for the day, and hope that tomorrow we've got a bit more clarity around where we're headed in terms of if, when, how. we leave Brexit. We leave the when I say we, I mean the UK leaves the eurozone.
You know what,
But
mate? It's been there's been so much politics on the TV recently, and I was looking at it yesterday and just thinking the guys that run these shows, it's always the same guys that run the shows. They've had more work out of Brexit than they probably will ever have in their career.
yeah,
They must be loving it. Must be
what are they
absolutely
what are they
loving
going
it.
to do when it's over?
Yeah, exactly, because it won't be the UK, will it? It'll be something another country that they'll be talking about, which the people over here won't be interested in. But it really has sparked a huge interest in politics in this country, which I think is very healthy.
Yeah, look, there's an old saying, isn't there? It's an ill wind that blows no good. And if this is a clean out that's necessary, or the change of wind direction, then bring it on. And that's the
Yeah,
point. Bring the bloody thing on. Just get it over.
yeah,
That's all
yeah,
we want.
yeah. Okay, mate. Well, I will see you tomorrow, and everyone else see you tomorrow. We'll be
Okay,
back.
dokie. Yep, same bat time.
Trade time, same trade channel.
Rightio. Have a good night and stay safe.